Jai Hind everyone. Today we are back again conducting our Thursday series lecture. And the subject of today is actually very important because what capacities we generate in the non-kinetic domain that is going to dictate the future of the country. You all will be aware that there are three major disruptions which are taking place in the world. One is the geopolitical disruption, which are happening in various regions of the world. And there are geo-economic disruptions, whether some bit could be attributed to the COVID or Russia-Ukraine war, where the grain supplies were affected, or multiple other regions embargo on Russia for oil shipping and all that. So the geo-economic disruptions are also taking place. And third and most important disruption is the technological disruption. And if you critically analyze, you will find that the technological disruptions actually dictate the geopolitical and geoeconomic disruptions. I'll give you two examples. And before I give you those two examples, it is also important to understand that the technological disruption does not mean that you have used only the high end of the technology to produce some, high caliber and technology savvy equipment and use that. It could also result in rudimentary, low cost, simple to produce, manufacture and use equipment, which can also have the strategic impact. So two examples which I wanted to give it to you to indicate as to how is the technology becoming important, because then this narration will further lead to as to how the non-kinetic domain is becoming very important. You would have seen the Ukrainian defense forces firing their drones and missiles in Black Sea, and Ukraine is a country which doesn't have a navy because they don't have to, Crimea went out of them, they don't have actually a sea ship. But with that only they were forced to effect Soviet Navy in a manner that it was forced to move eastwards. Once you see the different examples in case of Houthis firing in Red Sea, again the very high-end equipment was not used. But that single act, or few of such acts, impacted the realignment of the world in some way. USA mobilized its resources, UK came in, some of the other NATO countries moved in. So that was one alignment. So other countries didn't mobilize, but Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, they forced a different kind of alliance. So you see how, as to how a single act, which is technology driven, has made this kind of change. India also mobilized its forces from Navy and Air Force in excellent manner to serve its national interests. But as we go ahead, while there will be some component of kinetic war fighting, but its share in the overall war fighting matrix is going to reduce. It is a non-kinetic component which is going to enhance. The non-kinetic component could include, unlimited number of things. It could include the cyber warfare, electronic warfare. It could include multiple kind of the informal warfare, because today everything is being weaponized. Whether it is water, whether it is the grain, this agricultural produces, fertilizers, anything, everything is being weaponized. And in that there is no actually kinetic contact with the opposing forces or the forces which are inimical to your national interest. And since capacity creation in the non-kinetic domain is much more challenging, so earlier we understand and start taking actions to create capacities, we'll be in a better place to handle our challenges, because China and Pakistan will continue to remain our neighbors. What best can happen, because of the political, diplomatic, and other nations, the relations may improve in future. But if they have a capacity which can subvert our national interest, and you would have seen the recent change in the Chinese forces about the information support force and other things which they have focused. In fact, you'd be surprised to know there are close to 19 to 20 technologies where China is even leading the world ahead of USA also. And in addition to the technological impact, they are also trying to dictate the standards associated with that, because the international standards are non-existent. So therefore, the non-kinetic component is very, very important. We all have to be seized with this requirement, and we couldn't have had a better speaker than Brig Rajeev Ohri, who is a dear friend of mine, and I had the opportunity to serve with him in Director General of Information System. He speaks his mind in a candid manner, a high caliber professional, and I'm sure you will be benefited, from his deliberation. He has been advocating the enhancing non-kinetic component in our defense forces since then. But our pace has not been really matching. But I think of it, there is a growing realization in the defense forces, what I infer with my interaction at the hierarchy. And hopefully, in case we simulate that discussion and take action, we will be moving in the right direction. Now, I request Tushar Mittal to speak about the speaker before he starts the deliberation.
Jain sir, Brigadier Rajeev Ohri, Vishesh Seva Medal, is an alumnus of Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. Brigadier Ohri is MSc in Physics Electronics from University of Delhi, MTech Modeling and Simulation from University of Pune. He is a graduate from Defence Service Staff College, Wellington and High Command course. His command assignments include Company Commander in Signal Intelligence during Op Vijay, Command of a Signal Regiment in Op Hifazat, Deputy Commander of Strike Rapid Brigade in Southern Command, and Chief Signal Officer of a Corps in Op Hifazat, Op Raksha. Brigadier Ohri has done UN tenure in Rwanda and was chairperson of UN Military Manual of Signals, which is in vogue in UN peacekeeping operations till now. Brigadier Ohri had staff tenures in WARDEC, MS Branch, GSO-1 Ops of a new raising at his headquarters IGAR South, Colonel Ops in Planning in Director General Info System, and Brigadier PMO Suraj, where he was awarded Vishesh Seva Medal for his contribution to EW capability building of Indian Army. Presently, he is CEO of Agrani Aviations, a defense consultancy company. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Tushar. General Ashok, Director General, Center for Joint Warfare Studies, members, distinguished members of the center, and all the listeners who are online listening to this very relevant and very interesting topic which has been given to me by CENJOWS. As we look at this topic, enhancing non-kinetic component in tune with future warfare, there are two key words which are very important, on which we have to focus. We have to common understanding what do we mean by non-kinetic, and second is what is future warfare. So in my talk, what I've done is first initial few minutes, I'll be deliberating so that we are all on the same platform as far as when we talk these words, what do we mean by non-kinetic and what is future warfare. And the balance part, I'll come to certain key recommendations. Since time is short for this kind of a talk, we'll keep it focused on what do we need to do rather than the theory part of it. So the first quote is, we are all aware, this has been given by all the thinkers, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This has been going on since time immemorial. Whenever conflicts have happened, the opposing parties have concentrated on the center of gravities of their opponent and tried to degrade. And we also understand that notion of victory or defeat is in the mind. It is in the cognitive domain. And that is what opposing forces have always tried to impact, the cognitive domain, the mind. Now, what has changed in 21st century is the means to address this cognitive influence or carry out this influence. The domains or the means have expanded. Before 21st century, the means were only kinetic, primarily kinetic. And the second part, we have introduced a word of multi-domain. So the domains have expanded from pure land, sea, and air domains. We'll see what do we mean by multi-domain. So, and second uniqueness of 21st century is that the information domain has taken primacy. So we'll see how these things are panning out. And so I'll just flash this important slide of highlighting what is multi-domain operations. If you carefully see, the circles in green were the primary means of carrying out that influence before 21st century. But as I said, that expansion has taken place in multiple domains. As the DG also mentioned that this warfare, I actually prefer not to use the word warfare in today's term, because if you heard even our Prime Minister say a few days back that the era of war is over. So I'll use a better word, that there is a aggressive competition in all domains, which is happening. And the combined effect of all these domains is the net resultant comprehensive national power. So countries who have been able to synergize all these domains, their comprehensive national power is at a higher threshold. And we can see that each of these circles is today becoming a domain in itself of this aggressive competition. Now we see the blue circles, you can group them into the information domain, the space, cyber, EM spectrum, public opinion, and even influence. This is the information domain. And when we say non-kinetic, other than the green circles, you can say all are non-kinetic other than the green. So I hope we are clear on two things: multi-domain operations and comprehensive national power. The ability to synergize these domains is resulting into the comprehensive national, and there's an aggressive competition on each of these domains. Now, the important thing to understand is that each of these domains is in 21st century is getting glued. This comprehensive national power is getting activated through the information domain. The efficiency of each domain is dependent on the information domain, and the linkage of one domain is also happening through the information domain. So it will not be wrong to say that information domain is like the nervous system of the nation, or the backbone of the MDO. It glues, it is the binding force which is creating that synergy. So the expansion from kinetic and emergence of these non-kinetic domains, if you see, the space for kinetic is relatively reducing, while the hardcore kinetic people will say Russia-Ukraine is a live example. But if we see this Russia-Ukraine warfare or conflict, it is happening in multiple domains. They may be in the background. And another beauty of this information domain is that it is acting in a continuum. There is no D-Day and there is no end day. It is continuously happening 24/7. So this one needs to understand. So what I want to highlight by this slide is that this information domain, which I said is the glue, which is also physically being seen in the blue circles, is that this is a very, very important national resource. It's a very important national resource. And it needs to be recognized as a domain by the nation. So with this brief non-kinetic understanding, we come to what is so peculiar about 21st century conflicts, or the future war which we are talking, future conflicts. We see that today's conflicts are not limited to land, air, and sea, which is obvious. And seeing the previous slide, combination of kinetic and non-kinetic is the new norm. And I said information operations, they are on a continuum, they're constantly happening. Now here I come to the point. Before these modern conflicts or 21st century conflicts, when land, air, and sea were the primary things, the segregation of military and civil was a very logical conclusion. But this change which has happened in 21st century, where information domain has taken over and multi-domain operations are already underway. Instead of military, this is a very common term which is being used all over the world in military-civil fusion. Our northern adversary actually uses this as a center of gravity. And but a lot of people, during my interactions and in the readings, I realized that this military word is not very, people in the civil are not very comfortable with. They take it as a slightly aggressive word. So I will probably use the term a strategic culture in the civil domain, in the civil society, which is now an imperative. But for the sake of commonality, we'll continue using this military-civil fusion. If we see our traditional adversaries or the competitors, they are naturally civil-military fused since birth. India as a country did not have this culture. And since we kept on limiting our options to land, air, and sea, we never thought of the non-kinetic and multiple domain options. We kept the strategic culture and the military segregated from the civil. So, but in 21st century conflict, with the info domain backdrop, this cannot be allowed to happen. The fusion is an imperative because the technology expertise, the information domain expertise, India, we know that it is a leading technology power, but has it manifested in our defense domain in the same proportion? The answer is obvious. So why it has not happened is because of this, because we have kept the civil and military segregated. And there has not been a strategic culture in our other domains, which I mentioned. So now the challenge is that the leadership, both the political as well as the military, has to align with this new multi-domain paradigm. The political leadership has to understand that it is a national multi-domain operation effort, and their task is to synergize the domains, utilizing the information domain capacities. And the military has to understand that its role as a kinetic force is now limited to the operational and tactical domains. But they are also a very important part of the multi-domain operations. So there has to be a seamless connect between the national objectives to the strategic objectives to the operational and tactical objectives. Now, fundamentally, this last line I've deliberately kept, where application of kinetic templates to information domain is always counterproductive, because we invariably, when a problem or a issue is at our hand, we tend to template it from our kinetic training. So a new technology or a new issue crops up, we start looking at which is the agency which is suited for the job, and we try to delegate it. Say, I'll give you two examples. The information domain is a combination of communication and information technology, cyberspace, electromagnetic spectrum. These are technologies which have evolved in the last few years. But you see the Indian national organization, where there's a Ministry of Communication which is separate, Ministry of IT is separate, there's a Ministry of Information and Broadcast which is separate. And within our defense organization also, we are looking at typically in a linear fashion in the services. Within the services, we are looking at arms and services. Whereas an issue which requires a synergy of multiple aspects cannot be subject to a linear thinking of a particular arm or service or a director. So this kinetic template to info domain will always be counterproductive. We have to evolve and think out of box, which I'll try to give in my recommendations how we need to handle this complete non-kinetic and info domain vertical. Okay, now I'm giving a very innovative new concept of how to look at things. Each domain we should look at not technologies but capabilities. We have to be capability centric rather than technology centric. Each domain has to look at, it has to protect its own domain, it has to manage the domain, and also this domain has to have a capacity, given the aggressive competition, the expertise which this domain has, does it have the influence to degrade your competitors' capability in that domain, if required? So this protect, control, denial, P, C, and D, this will continue throughout my presentation. I want to introduce this concept. Each domain has to have this capability. Take any example. Say space domain. It has to protect its own domain so that there is no interdiction to my resources. I have to manage the space domain so that I derive the maximum efficiency out of it. And as a national resource, if required, if there is infringement on my domain, I should have the capability to respond in that domain and degrade the adversaries that particular domain. That capability and expertise lies only in that domain. So that strategic culture has to come in each domain. So you look at each of those circles and it is applicable. So these are the capabilities which we have to look at. And again, technology versus capability. It is capability of protection, capability of control. The denial capability comes from both kinetic and non-kinetic resources. It could be a physical attack or it could be a non-kinetic attack. Okay. Now, fortunately, there has been some thought process in our country where all these domains were identified by our government, and there was a national critical information infrastructure which was put in place. And you see all these boxes in which defense is also one of the boxes. But as a national resource, defense has got, I put that green circle around certain boxes, which have got huge implication for defense. If during operations, my transportation is not supporting me, or sensitive government intelligence organizations, telecommunications space is not supporting the defense, It has got a huge impact. So the 24/7 efficiency of these domains are also impacting my defense capability. It is in my interest to keep these alive 24/7 during ops. So there has to be a seamless exchange between these organizations. And so National Critical Infrastructure Organization was raised that this is my criticality. This at any cost cannot be denuded, the capability of these organizations. Okay. So to some part, the protect PCT, protect part was given a thought. Okay. Now, if you see how is the defense information flow, on the left is that NCI, where small box defense you can see. Now, this defense information flows through our Army data network, Air Force network, Navy unified network, and all this has been implemented recently through Network for Spectrum, that's the backbone, the fiber optic backbone which has been laid in the country. But the operational and tactical information flows over the air, whether it is Air Force, Navy, or Army. This is where over the air or wireless, tactical wireless networks are so very important for the defense forces. So this is the information flow of the defense. Fortunately, defense networks are air gapped, but the other boxes which you see, they're not air gapped networks. So it has got the implication. You see the role, where does defense fit in the whole national gamut? Okay. Now I've highlighted this tactical wireless networks, and I wish to, I'll two things from my next slide. If we see the evolution of technology and where we are going, two paradigm shifts need to be understood very clearly. Those are light bulb moments, something like invention of the light, which have happened in 21st century. One is the marriage of compute with communication. In your younger days, you would have seen there was a separate telephone and there was a separate, you used to hire a broadband connection separately. Two were separate devices. There used to be a modem, there used to be a computer. Now this marriage of compute and communication in the devices which you all are carrying, about 10, 15 years back, these were the specifications of a supercomputer, as far as the compute is concerned. 10 years back, these were the specs of a supercomputer which we all are carrying in our pockets. And second is the data exchange capability, which was only possible through wired optical networks, is today possible over the air. So two paradigm game changing, which have got huge implications for not only security forces, but for the complete world order. This high speed networks over the air and this marriage of compute and communication. And you see the manifestation which has come in mobiles, drones, all smart devices, your smart ammunitions. The moment smart word comes, it is actually meaning the compute and communication are conjoined and high grade capabilities. Okay. So, and as we see the progress of these, where are we leading to? So these technologies are actually not in isolation, they are converging towards certain core capabilities. Ultimately, it is basically to replicate the human being. AI, so-called, is the human mind, but there are simultaneous technologies which are working. And by the law of singularity, it is already predicted that by 2040, 2050, these machines are going to take over human beings. They'll be advanced. So this is the way technologies are progressing. So we have to keep that in back of our mind. Now, sticking to the wireless, why I'm saying wireless, I just want to highlight, before 21st centuries, invaders used to come to capture the wealth of a nation on horsebacks. They used to carry gold, diamonds, and whatnot. Just to give some figures, in 2022, this spectrum auction took place by the government. The cost of the spectrum was nearly 1.5 lakh crores. So you won't be able to count the zeros in 1.5 lakh crores. Just to put it in simplistic relative terms, this 5,000 megahertz was equivalent to 1 million kg of gold, and 1 megahertz cost was 200 bricks of gold, 1 kg. And the price which has been kept for this year's auction, 10,000 megahertz, is 963 billion rupees. So the point I wish to highlight, we created an army, air force, navy to protect our land borders, airspace, and our sea borders. What have we done to protect our spectrum wealth? Are we talking of cyber electromagnetic sovereignty? The complete nation's information flow is taking place now with the capacities. That is why the spectrum is so costly. What are our red lines for the spectrum? Is there an information force to PCD, protect, control, and deny? So these are the questions. If they're answered, we'll come to some logical conclusions on the capability development. People normally are very interested in quick results. Yeah, ये non-kinetic कुछ कर दो और कुछ जादू कर दो so that the adversaries, but not realizing we have to invest in the process. The results will come. So you have to put a first process in place. Have to change. So now just we look at what is the PCD and now in the complete information domain, what is existing today. As far as we mentioned, there is a NCIPC, but it is only for the wired network, not for the wireless. That is why it is protection of the wireless. We need to work on it. As far as management is concerned, as I said, there is a IT, there's a METI organization, there's a NIC, and there are basically government approvals which need to be taken for hosting, and there is still some sense. And there's a WPC, Wireless Planning Commission, there's a Telecom Regulatory Authority in the wireless domain. So as far as our country is concerned, we are very good in control. Putting controls, licenses, and approvals, we put things there. Now coming to the denial capabilities, we'll keep silent on the offensive. These are there, but better left for today's discussion. But we'll focus on the wireless denial capabilities. Obviously, in the tactical domain, there are electronic warfare units who have the capacities, but the point I wish to highlight is that this is another major capability we need to look at. The strategic spectrum denial capabilities. So we now come to, I hope by now you are clear about non-kinetic. You are clear about what is peculiar about 21st century. What are we talking about? Now I'm going to give some slightly out of box solutions. Now for the complete non-kinetic capability, we need to look at a national level non-kinetic or information domain umbrella at the national level. This will automatically bring recognition to the information domain at the national level, and also synergize the multiple agencies who are doing work in different areas and different domain, running after technologies to converge, because it is very important today to remove overlaps, synergize the excellent capability which our country has and the expertise which the country has for both the civil as well as the strategic domain. But these original concept I'm introducing, that we have to start looking at information enabling technologies, information disruption technologies, and information management technologies in these three verticals, and not in AI, quantum, big data, and they'll fall into place. The grouping of these, because tomorrow a new technology comes up, you create another vertical for that new technology. It has to seamlessly fit into the structure organization so that it synergizes and improves the efficiency of the country as well as the defense forces. And a similar organization needs to be followed within the defense forces so that there is a seamless connect from the strategic to the operational and tactical. So just absorb this. This is a very important concept. Info enabler, info disruption, and info management. It completes the loop of the information domain. Now, what is info enabler? If you just, I have listed 4 important things. Is the information communication technology. This is an enabler. All the applications which are supporting this ICT. The next is the block of the this intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. People actually, start calling ISR as a domain of warfare, space as a domain of warfare. And you name anything, it becomes no. They are info enablers under the umbrella of the information domain. If you have the capability of info enablement and info disruption, your info management improves. They are all interlinked. So just one slide on the info enabler, because this is very important. How we group these technologies, because one in loose terms keeps hearing AI, big data, robotics, and quantum, and so on and so forth as separate domains. So they have to be put in the correct place. Info enabler, when I say, now if we see space has got 3 aspects basically. Space has got a ICT, communication enabler. It has got communication satellites. It has got imagery satellites. And the third is the position, navigation, and timing. So if we see that the secure communication takes care of the space-based communication, the IMINT is put in the ISR. So space is only left with position, navigation, and time. The rest are in the ICT and ISR domains. And rest all are applications actually. So if this is the brick, or this is the structure on which we consolidate, all agencies who are having overlaps and multiple fall into place. Air Force has got its own space vertical, Army is following own space vertical, Navy, and everybody, not only space, AI, everybody is working on everything. So this kind of umbrella organization is the need of the hour. It actually was required yesterday, as of yesterday. So with this, what does defense need to do? The first and foremost low-hanging fruit which needs to be done is creation of an information command. The first theaterized command which can be easily implemented without any turbulence and without any space encroachment of these theater commands can carry, but the information command of the defense forces which can be in sync with the national umbrella, and this can be the stepping stone to formulation of the national umbrella. So information command is the non-kinetic force of the defense forces which needs to be implemented on the model which I just mentioned of ICT at the tri-services level, info denial at tri-services level, ISR at tri-services, application at tri-services, space domain at tri-services level, and perception management at the tri-services. All resources of the three services need to be clubbed and formulated into an information commander who has got the powers. Now here, important point which I want to highlight, this information commander and this force need not be pure. It can pick up the experts from civil domain and freelancers, anybody. This has to be, the powers of information commander has to be of a theater commander. In fact, in my further recommendation, I am a strong proponent since last many years that the defense forces need a military information service for the strategic ICT management. There's no point a combatant looking after fiber optic in Bhusawal and Ratlam. It is a totally contradictory, and it is denuding our combat capabilities. This whole national agency has to be made responsible for my hinterland ICT requirements. Military information service should be raised as of yesterday to take care of my complete strategic and backbone networks, in which there can be defense people who can be on deputations or things like that. But it has to be a pure technical military information service, utilizing the immense talent pool of the country in the technology domain. Our expertise as combatants, as uniformed people, is in the operational and tactical areas. That nobody has. Our USP is that. Every person who is deputed for a job which other person can do is at the cost of your national capability. Combatant not to be wasted in jobs which any non-combatant can do. Okay, so this information domain, information commander, powers of a theater commander of an integrated force. Now coming to the takeaways of today's talk. National Info Umbrella with this military civil fusion model with an accountable R&D. Accountable, when I say, it is not R&D which delivers equipment what they can produce. The R&D to produce what the nation wants to win the war. Forums for academia, industry, and of course defense. So this national info umbrella is the need of the hour. and it has to follow the information domain capability development in the three verticals: that enabler, operations, and management. And we have to start talking, start discussing, and start debating on the cyber, electromagnetic, and info domains of sovereignty. What is a red line or breach of our info domain and electromagnetic sovereignty? Who takes the ownership in the country? Is the ownership to be taken by agencies which were created in kinetic warfare domains? Or we need to think afresh and create these info umbrellas, which is the need of the 21st century? And this change in, very important last point, again, military civil fusion, is the change in the mindset where all those associated ministries / organizations which have got, where the stakes are very huge for conduct of any defense operation. We need to have a presence as defense wing / advisors in those relevant ministries. And this exchange and liaison between these ministries has to be seamless. They need to be educated on what impact their resources will have in case of a major conflict and this aggressive competition. In my experience, I've seen there were many a times moments where I found that due to our intervention, the same resource was utilized in a much more efficient way, both for the civil population as well as the defense, which otherwise would have gone totally waste and been utilized only for defense. In remote areas, in my experience has been when I interacted with the Ministry of Telecom and BSNL in remote areas. So when we sat down together, we planned the whole networks in a way where mutually all the defense installations and defense locations got benefited, both during peace and war. And same is with railways, same is with canal system, same with irrigation, you name a thing, space domain. So this presence of defense wing / advisors should be made mandatory by the government in these ministries. And second, I've already mentioned Military Information Service, the strategic ICT organization, and this will assist in our enhanced combat operations. A large population of our defense forces combatants will get relieved from duties which they're not supposed to do. And it will also pave the way for the information command, and they will be the backbone of the information command. Now, many people say that we do not have a very nice experience with the military engineering service, but those are, kinetic era days. We have to evolve models which are more efficient, which are recognizing talent, and it is capability oriented. Okay. And as I mentioned, that the space, cyber, EM spectrum, and perception need to be considered subset of the information domain. No loose talking. Space, cyber, these are domains of warfare. If you start looking from the info domain perspective, they're subsets. They are facilitating the info. Then information organization with strategic EM spectrum ops capability, considering the aggressive competition which we have, and the geopolitics and dynamics of the subcontinent, this requirement is going to face us in the very near future. Now, creation of this information support force, is a outcome of 2015 strategic support force. The experiences of strategic support force have resulted in a refinement of. So we need to study those models, how they created this information umbrella organizations in 2015, learned the lessons, and now evolved into fine-tuned organizations which can meet the requirement. So unless we put in place, learn from our experiences, iterative model of improvement, so we have to start somewhere. And as far as the defense forces are concerned, focusing on the operational and tactical level, the technologies which are going to make a huge impact because of the shift from the wired to the wireless domain are the cyber and electronic warfare capability in the wireless domain, countering the software-defined radios, countering the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance which is taking place over the air, countering the tactical drones which are carrying out multiple ISR as well as delivery systems, countering mobile technologies in the tactical and operational areas, and of course the satellite SATCOM. So these are the focus areas for the armed forces in the operational and tactical domain, understanding the shift which is taking place and not focusing on things which the strategic or the national organizations can do. While there is a lot of expertise which is existing in the defense forces, they can be, offset and utilized for the strategic task also. That is not a, but the primacy and the focus should remain on the tactical and operational counter informatization tasks. So directed energy is another area, and of course countering the position, navigation, and timing in the op tactical area is going to pay huge dividends, because everything and anything today in the op tactical area is now getting linked with the GIS. So countering this GIS system is going to pay huge dividends in the op tactical area. With this, I have finished my talk, and I'll conclude by saying that the local, subcontinental conditions require our own in-house indigenous solutions. We have to think in the framework of our competitors in the subcontinent and not start picking up templates from anywhere in the world. While Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Hamas, and all these wars are very good to follow and learn what are things, but picking up templates of those areas and directly applying to our situation may not be correct. We have to think of own original solutions, and to me, if we put in place some of these recommendations, will be on the right. With this, I